Welcome to the Holiday Podcast, where we sit over homemade challah on Friday afternoons here at my table. I'm your host, Tammy Priest, a Jewish follower of Jesus, and it's great to be with you again today as we talk about intersections between the old and the new. So as you can see, today we have challah streaked with green because it's not only holiday, it is also St. Patrick's Day. And I'm obviously wearing green, and I'm also wearing this four-leaf clover pendant with a pearl that my grandma Marion gave me when I was a girl. Now, of course, St. Patrick's Day is not a Jewish holiday, right? But it reminds me of the times that she helped me hunt in the backyard for four-leaf clovers when she and my grandpa would stay with us when my parents went on vacation. And I do love celebrating St. Patrick's Day for a few reasons. First, it's fun and festive and colorful, right? But also, as a Jesus follower, I love learning about people who did amazing things for God, particularly people like St. Patrick, who came out of a dark season and then went all in to share God's love with other people. But I do have kind of a personal attachment to Ireland, actually. So my grandma Arlene often shared with us about her cousin who was a chief rabbi of Ireland. And I wish I'd thought back then to ask her who he was, what his name was. I have a list of all 7 of the chief rabbis that there have been of Ireland, but I haven't figured out yet which one ties into my grandmother's family tree. If anyone wants to try to track that down for me, just let me know. But let's talk today about St. Patrick. People sometimes liken him to Moses and Joseph because they all lived as slaves in a foreign land. They all received supernatural revelations from God and then went on to save multitudes of people. But before I get ahead of myself, if all you know about St. Patrick is that we wear and eat everything green because he lived in Ireland, then let me start with just a quick bio. So Patrick was actually from Britain, from a fairly wealthy family in the 4th century. But when he was 16 years old, he was captured by Irish raiders and taken to Ireland, where he was sold as a slave. And his job was as a shepherd, which is this other connection to Joseph and to Moses. And it said that during that time that Patrick's faith really deepened. Well, then when he was about 22, he heard God's audible voice tell him to leave Ireland. So he walked like 200 miles to the coast, escapes on a ship, and goes back to his family in England. But he got another revelation as he was going back that said one day he was supposed to return to Ireland as a missionary to share about God. So he starts his religious training in Britain. And after being ordained as a priest 15 years later, he's sent back to Ireland officially as a missionary. And here's one way that Patrick really reminds me of the Apostle Paul. Because instead of telling people to abandon their culture in order to embrace Jesus, Patrick appealed to the tribal leaders in Ireland and incorporated Irish culture into the ways he shared the gospel, just like Paul did. One big example that I read about recently was that since the sun was this powerful symbol in Ireland, Patrick incorporated it into the design of a cross, making it feel more natural and familiar for Irish people. And that is where the Celtic cross comes from, which is pretty cool, right? I just learned that this week. But what I especially love about St. Patrick now is that I discovered another connection between him and Paul and me. So based on extensive research of his family records by Christians, it's been determined that Patrick's family was probably originally Jewish. It seems that his ancestors were part of the Jews who scattered from Israel and the Roman Empire during the tyranny of Titus in the 1st century. And this family was connected to the Merovingian dynasty, I hope I said that right, which was kind of a family of nobility in Ireland that was known to be Jews by heritage from the tribe of Judah, with some thought that they might be actually related to Jesus. And this family had incorporated their Judaism and their Jewish rituals into their Christian faith, which is very familiar and special to me. So things like continuing to observe the Sabbath and celebrating Passover. But because of anti-Semitism at the time, especially within the church, most of the references to Patrick's Jewish lineage were erased from the records. But as one scholar reported in his book, the original text is very clear in what it says. It claims that St. Patrick's ancestors were Jews who were dispersed from the Holy Land before they settled on the northwest coast of Brittany, France. This is something we don't usually hear about. I'd certainly never heard it growing up or even in my life since then as a Messianic Jew until recently. And so I hope that on the St. Patrick's Day Sabbath Eve, as you wear your green and eat your green foods, whether it's challah or guacamole or a shamrock shake, I hope you'll think about St. Patrick in a new way, that he came from Jewish ancestors who began to follow Jesus, and that he lived through a frightening ordeal that was desperately painful and isolating, but that once he came out of that season, Patrick then went back to that same place of pain and shared the love of Jesus there in the context of the people's existing culture, and he ended up impacting the world in far-reaching ways. And it's a strong reminder to me, and I hope to you also, that when we one day emerge out of our seasons of sorrow, that as Paul wrote to the Corinthians, that we can comfort others with the very comfort that we ourselves have received from God. And so today, I wish you a happy and very meaningful St. Patrick's and Challah Day.